Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring Elizabeth Gaskell's 1855 masterpiece, North and South. And let me tell you, this is a story that perfectly captures a society that has been completely upended by the Industrial Revolution. It's not just a romance or a simple drama. It's this really profound look at what actually happens to a nation when its entire foundational economy changes practically overnight. Picture this. You've got these sleepy, agrarian traditions suddenly colliding head-on with roaring, smoky capitalism. How do people even begin to adapt to that? I mean, how do they understand each other when their daily realities are so completely, fundamentally different? Well, this is the central question we are exploring today, and it really sets the stage for the sweeping, disruptive changes brought about by the Industrial Revolution. Section 1. The Divide, North and South. So let's start by zooming in on our protagonist, Margaret Hale. Talk about culture shock. Her family gets completely uprooted and she is caught right in the middle. On one hand, you have her roots in the traditional South in places like Helstone. It's idyllic, it's tranquil, and it's totally defined by a strict old world social hierarchy. But then you look at their new home, the gritty, smoky industrial North in the fictional town of Milton. It's entirely driven by these massive cotton mills and sudden new wealth. It's literally the divided soul of the nation right there in front of you. Now, just to survive in Milton, Margaret's father has to become a tutor, which brings the family right into the orbit of John Thornton. He's this proud, highly successful cotton mill owner. He is the very embodiment of the New North. But Margaret, she is instantly prejudiced against him. To her highly refined Southern aristocratic sensibilities, this pragmatic, profit-driven guy is absolutely not quite a gentleman. In her eyes, he's just a tradesman, no way around it. Moving on to Section 2, Masters, Men, and Unions. But hey, Margaret's view of the North, that is really only half the story. The working class are the ones who truly bore the brunt of this massive new capitalist machinery. Gaskell plunges us straight into their grueling realities through characters like Bessie Higgins. Bessie suffers from a fatal lung disease. And why? Simply from inhaling cotton fibers at the mill. It's awful. Add in constantly fluctuating wages, cramped housing, and heavy city pollution, and it's really no wonder that workers like Bessie's father turned to trade unionism. The collective anger here is just palpable. And this tension quickly builds into direct conflict. Employers like Thornton announce they're slashing wages. The workers retaliate by organizing a massive strike. And Thornton, refusing to budge an inch, actually brings in strikebreakers to keep things running. It pushes the whole town to an absolute boiling point, sparking a desperate, incredibly dangerous riot right at the mill gates. In this shocking collision of these two worlds, Margaret instinctively throws herself in front of Thornton to protect him from the angry mob, and she actually gets struck by a thrown stone in the process. All right, Section 3, Old Gentry meets New Wealth. So, that dramatic physical clash at the mill actually mirrors a much deeper ideological battle between Margaret's fading aristocratic order and Thornton's rising bourgeois power. Historically speaking, scholars point out that many of these northern industrialists in places like Manchester were Unitarians. They had the new money, sure, but what they really craved was the social capital, the respect, and the prestige of the old established order. They were actively pushing for true class integration. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Margaret and Thornton are literally speaking two different social languages. Margaret is desperately clinging to a pre-modern system of ranks, where your identity and your worth are based purely on inherited birthrights. But Thornton, and really the whole town of Milton, they operate on a modern class system. Over there, your identity is fluid. It's defined by your wealth, your economics, and your actual labor. And Thornton really hits the nail on the head when he powerfully deconstructs Margaret's Southern snobbery. Listen to this. He says, "When we speak of him as a man, we consider him in relation to himself, to life, to time, to eternity." He's redefining human worth, moving away from polite manners or inherited titles and focusing on endurance and inner strength. Being a man who shapes the world, he argues, is far, far superior to simply being a gentleman. Which brings us to Section 4, From Tragedy to Dialogue. Now, Gaskell didn't just write this debate for the sake of drama, it actually represented a massive shift in her own worldview. To put that into perspective, let's look at her 1848 novel, Mary Barton. The tone there is highly radical and tragic. Workers are depicted mostly as helpless, atomized victims, and the story ends in escalating violence. But just 7 years later, in North and South, she completely shifts gears. The tone is balanced and reconciliatory. The workers are now organized, dignified agents who are totally capable of reasoned debate. It's a huge evolution for her as a writer.
Section 5. A Legacy of Reconciliation.
So how does it all wrap up? Well, as we reach the conclusion, we actually see a brilliant blueprint for ethical capitalism. Through genuine dialogue, Thornton and the union leader, Higgins, overcome their prejudices and actually establish a communal kitchen for the workers. Margaret, meanwhile, finally learns the realities of commerce and math, eventually using her inherited fortune to save Thornton's failing mill. Their partnership, which is sealed with that famous romantic kiss at the railway station, becomes the ultimate bridge across the cultural divide. It's honestly wild to think about the enduring life cycle of this story, and it just proves how deeply its themes of empathy and progress still resonate today. From its Victorian debut in 1855 all the way to modern museum events happening in Manchester right now. And of course, we can't forget the 2004 BBC miniseries adaptation. It was so incredibly popular that eager fans actually crashed the BBC's message boards. Clearly, this is a story that still speaks to us. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. We are living in our own era of massive, rapid economic and technological shifts, right? The divides between different cultures, classes, and industries are just as real for us today as they were in Milton. So as you look around at our modern landscape, who are the bridge builders? Who is doing the hard work of turning tragedy and prejudice into dialogue and cooperative problem solving? Think about it. Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating story with me, and keep asking those tough questions.